Almost all of us want to get ahead and we really want to make progress. We really want to go from point A to point B as quickly as possible. But wanting progress and actually achieving progress, two different things. And progress can be elusive for a number of reasons. But what I wanted to do today is talk to you about 6 ingredients that you can turn into action to make your progress explode. So, let me just remind you that I am Mark Johnson, the founder of Bounce Pep, bringing you a fit and flourishing future. I'm also the youngest son of Bill Johnson. Please go ahead and subscribe now. This is as good a chance as you're ever going to get, so go ahead and push that button. You can also go to the www.bouncepep.com website, scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, and subscribe to our email list as well. And that will keep you in the loop. And with all of that said, let's jump into this. As is often the case, I'm going to use some anecdotes from the gym as well as from experiences that we all have outside of the gym to illustrate some of these points. But let's start off with that very first ingredient that you can turn into action, and that is commitment. So think about what commitment is. Commitment is a decision to follow through. So we all know people who think about doing something, people who want to do something, people who have hopes of doing something, but it's only when a person commits to actually following through that progress begins and you actually start to see a transition from point A to point B. It starts with that commitment. Now, I want to make sure that you understand the difference between mere motivation and commitment because there's quite a large difference. Motivation is great to have when you have it, but motivation can wax and wane. Motivation a lot of times can fade based on your mood. If you're in a down mood or if something has maybe happened recently that has you a bit depressed or a bit distraught, then that can affect your mood in a way that reduces your motivation. The nature of commitment is something totally different. Commitment is not dependent on your mood or on what happened to you an hour ago. Commitment is a decision to follow through. And so what that means is that you feel as though you have no other choice. When you're committed, you feel that you have no other choice but to do what needs to be done. The best example that I can give of commitment is maybe if you have kids, you will understand exactly what I mean when I say that when it comes time to put food on the table, you're committed to putting food on the table. I always tell people I have 3 daughters, and my daughters, they don't want to hear about, well, I had a terrible day and this went wrong and that went wrong. And so I just don't have any money to buy any food to put on the table. They don't want to hear that. They want to know, Papa, where's the food at? We're hungry, right? So I'm committed to making sure that I provide, food and lodging for my family so that they are protected, they can eat, right? That's a commitment. It has nothing to do with my mood or my motivation. I'm going to do it no matter how I feel, right? So that is the nature of commitment. And anytime that you have a goal that you're working towards, the bigger it is, the more committed you're going to have to be. And that means that you have to be willing to work on it, work towards it, even when you don't feel like it, even when your motivation is not as high as you would like it to be. That's the nature of commitment. You do what needs to be done because it needs to be done and it doesn't matter how you feel about it. But alas, it is too easy, far too easy to tell yourself that you are committed to something. And so the next ingredient that you need is discipline. Now, understand that discipline and commitment are actually the same thing. It's two forms of the same thing. Okay. What distinguishes discipline from commitment is that discipline is commitment in action. So think about this. If you say that you are committed, then the only way that you can demonstrate that you are committed is through your actions. Okay. And that's what discipline is, commitment in action. If you tell yourself you're going to get in the best shape of your life, then the only way that you can demonstrate that commitment is by working out, actually going to a gym, actually picking up some dumbbells, actually maybe taking a course, actually hiring a personal trainer. If you say that you're committed to learning and to building your base of knowledge, then one of the things that you would do is you would read books, okay? And so when you're reading and reading and reading, okay, you're basically demonstrating your commitment. That's what discipline is. You're being disciplined about reading, you're being disciplined about working out. And by doing that, you are not only telling yourself you are committed, but you are proving that you are committed. Now, remember, I told you to stick with me because we're building here. The number three ingredient that you're going to need is focus. Now, understand the nature of focus. Focus is a combination of clarity plus concentration. Clarity is simply learning and doing what is necessary now. It's okay to think a few steps down the road, but don't get bogged down in a lot of thinking down the road when you have something right in front of you that needs to be taken care of now. So, whatever it is that you have to learn now and do now, okay, learn and do that thing so that you can get that step out of the way and move on to the next step and actually make progress. Now, the second part, again, is concentration. You cannot be concentrated on what you're supposed to be doing if you are distracted. So, the key to concentration is simply to eliminate or to ignore distractions. You know, it's a funny thing, another simple anecdote that I'm sure you can relate to. You go to the gym sometimes and you see people who will do a set. Maybe they're doing something like a shoulder press, and they finish their set and they sit down and they start looking at their smartphone. Before you know it, 2 or 3 minutes have gone by and they're still sitting there on their smartphone. And you see these people come in week after week, month after month, year after year, and they look the same. They never make any progress. They're doing all of this working out, all of this lifting all the time, and they never actually progress. And it's because they're not actually concentrating when they are working out. They're being distracted by their handheld device. Okay, so remember, you're going to have to focus. That means clarity plus concentration. This is getting good now. Now, watch how this builds. Remember that the number two ingredient was discipline. The number three ingredient was focus. The number four ingredient is consistency. Now, what is consistency, you might ask? Consistency is a combination of the aforementioned discipline plus focus plus one more thing, frequency. Frequency is very important. The idea behind frequency is simply that you must be working on whatever needs to be done frequently enough, often enough to build momentum. Momentum is very, very important in your life. It's very, very important, especially if you're trying to pursue an important goal. You need momentum. If you are stopping and starting, then what it means is that as soon as you start to build any momentum, you break it and you essentially start from zero again. You don't want to always be starting from zero. And so you have to be consistent. Okay. Again, that is a combination of discipline, focus, plus frequency. Okay. So maintain your discipline, maintain your focus, and work at it frequently enough to build momentum so that you're not always restarting. It's so hard to restart, much like when you're driving a car. Have you ever noticed that the car has to do the most work when you are at a full stop and you push the accelerator and you have to get the car moving from that full stop? That's when the car is going to be expending the most energy just trying to get going. Once you get up to 70 miles per hour, then it's very easy for the car to just maintain that speed because it has momentum now. And your life works in the same way. When you're talking about making progress, progress works in the same way. You want to build momentum and keep momentum. And the way that you do that is by being consistent with your effort. Let's talk about the fifth ingredient. You may not have thought of this one, but I'm going to bring it up because it is vitally important. So that fifth ingredient is measurement. Measurement is a combination of tracking plus metrics. Now, you can't get to the metrics before you've taken care of the tracking. So, tracking is essentially information collecting or data collection. So, whatever you're working on, there's going to be some information that you can derive from your efforts that you can use to understand what you're doing, what is working, and what is not working, and how effectively you are progressing, or how quickly or how slowly you are progressing. There's a lot of information there if you are just willing to track what you are doing. Okay. Once you have that information, literally writing down or in some way recording information, okay? Once you have that information, then you are able to look over that information and you start to look for patterns. You start to do calculations. And once you do that, then you're getting into building metrics. So metrics are simply ways that you can measure your own progress or your own performance. You can think of them as KPI or key performance indicators, as you probably know. So once you have the information, then you can develop metrics and understand how well you are progressing, whether or not there's something that you can stop doing, or whether there's something that maybe you need to double down on, okay, and actually do more of. But having data allows you to then generate metrics to gauge how effective your efforts actually are. So tracking is so important. You have to track your information, okay? Make sure that you get it recorded somewhere, okay? And make sure that you look at it and that you actually use it to get better and better and better. Because if you want to make progress, you really need to be getting better all the time. And you don't have to take giant leaps, okay? Just getting better by a millimeter, every day builds up over time. That's part of that momentum that we were talking about, right? Building momentum. If you just get better by just a millimeter every day, over a lot of time, those millimeters add up and you're building momentum. As long as you're consistent with it, you're building momentum. But you got to be measuring, okay? So measurement is very important. Congratulations if you have made it this far because we have reached the sixth and final ingredient, and that is accountability. I would define accountability simply as an obligation to do what is needed. Now, ideally, this would be self directed, meaning that no one would have to tell you or remind you what needs to be done. You simply know it needs to be done and you do it of your own volition. In reality, I think that for most people in most situations, how accountability works is that it is based on interdependencies. Let me give you a great example. Think about how a car is produced. You have to start off with some sheet metal, and somebody's got to be at the factory to receive that sheet metal from the supplier. They have to make sure it's the right thickness and the right length, and of course, the right type of metal. And then once they do that, then they receive it. Someone has to scan it into the system. Someone has to send the sheet metal over to the press so that it can be stamped into a shape. Once it's stamped, then it has to go over into the welding department. But at each of those steps, there's a different person or a different team of people working on it. Okay? The person who is second in that chain can't do what they need to do until the person that was first finishes what they need to do. Okay? The person who is third in that chain has to wait for the person who is second in that chain. So you have all of these interdependencies that guarantee accountability because you don't want to stop the production line. Now, so let's take another example from the world of fitness. One way that you can kind of manufacture accountability is by hiring a personal trainer, for example. So a personal trainer is going to follow up with you about whether you're eating well. They're going to follow up with you about whether or not you've been doing your warm-ups properly. When you're actually doing a session, they're going to make sure that you do 5 sets instead of giving up at 3. Now, maybe the 4th and the 5th sets are pretty difficult, so they have to lower the weight a little bit or something like that. But the bottom line is they're going to hold you accountable, okay? So accountability is that sixth and final ingredient. If you are not accountable, what happens is somewhere along the way, you are quite likely to simply give up. If you have no accountability, if you have no sense of accountability, then you don't have any sense that you're obligated to do what needs to be done. So you have to keep yourself accountable for making progress. And that is the sixth and final ingredient. So I want you to put all 6 of these ingredients into action so that you can make your progress in life explode. Remember, you can have all of the information and not enough clarity. And what I'm trying to do here is give you both the information and the clarity to apply that information. Okay? Because if you're not applying what you're learning, then you're not really learning. Now, I want you to make sure that you check out the Passion and Purpose Project. If you need help clarifying what your purpose in life is for the next 5 to 10 years, I'm talking about something that you can commit yourself to that's going to energize you, okay? And that is going to give you a way to contribute something impactful to the world. Then the Passion and Purpose Project is something that you need to take a look at immediately. It's here in Japan, 3 days, 4 nights, wonderful experience. We believe in experiences. Programs don't change your life, experiences do. And that's what the Passion and Purpose Project is. So, with all that said, I just want you to take this to heart. Go ahead, start applying. All right? Start applying. Put this stuff to work. I want you to take this with you. I'll talk to you next time.